It's Saturday afternoon. Welcome to the Land Tamper Stream. We're going to talk about the CCIE journey and some other things along the way that have been happening to me. So good stuff, all technology related. This, as a matter of fact, is the wallpaper of the day. It is from the site that I found, eso.org. And this is La Silla Observatory in Chile. It's been taking some great photographs. But anyway, that's a wallpaper of the day in celebration of astronomy type things. But today we're going to talk about the theme of just being self-taught. Is it good or bad? Some Ansible F5 project stuff. And of course, we are 60 days out from the next, tentatively 60 days out from the next attempt on the CCIE routing and switching written exam. So hope you're having a good Saturday. We're going to get right into the vlog topics here of the day. One being self-taught. I was just thinking about this as I was learning Ansible and teaching myself Ansible. I think that might be a little bit of a misnomer because anything we're learning, we're building on past knowledge. I think the general idea when people use self-taught is that they mean sort of self-guided. Mentors in the house. We lost Peapod. How you land? Hey, mentors. Hope you're having a good Saturday afternoon. I hear thunder right now, just now. So we might be in for a storm here in a minute, which is no surprise. Typical Saturday afternoon, tropical storm stuff here in Central Florida. But yeah, so self-guided is typically what that implies because, like, for example, I'm trying to learn something for the first time, Ansible. It's a tool I want to use. No one told me I had to use it, but I knew it was available to me, and I have a project coming up, and so I need to learn this product and this project and how to use it and what are the best practices here. And so I could call up someone I know who knows Ansible and say, hey, will you spend some time with me, teach me? Or I can use the resources that are available to me, which is learning by without any particular guidance. So I'm going to, Google searches, YouTube, reading documentation. And generally, as network engineers, don't we do that a lot? Like, oftentimes, that's how we're learning. We're guiding ourselves. Maybe we have guidance, maybe we don't, or different levels of guidance. But generally, it's on us to learn something new and to get it done. Especially, I remember in working for a managed service provider. Often, the salespeople will sell a product or sell a project, and now it has to be implemented. We haven't ever really done it before, but that's not going to prevent us from selling it in some cases. And anyway, I was often the person at a previous job where, actually at many of my jobs, I've been that person that's like, all right, for better or worse, I've been that person, hey, we need this done. No one knows how to do it yet. Please figure it out and go do it, right? Yes, hands-on is the way to go. Yes, and hands-on, some may call self-taught hands-on. You can be in a class and hands-on too, but oftentimes it's just, dive right in. And it is a good way to learn for a lot of people. Is that good or is that bad? And I think it depends on your personality a lot. And whether you thrive on sort of exploring on your own versus someone trying to direct you. But I have to say, if I had a choice for most topics, I would want formal instruction. And what I mean by formal instruction is whether that is a one-on-one training, a class, a video course, like recognized training, not just, a lot of things on YouTube, like when I do presentations of different topics here on YouTube. That is informal. Maybe some of it is informal training, but it's not formal training. Like Cisco has their recognized vendors, Ansible, Red Hat, they have their recognized vendors and training programs. That's their formal training. But more often than not, we don't get that luxury. And, in my view, I would rather not be self-taught for a lot of topics, because I've learned many times in the past that when I teach myself, I learn I sometimes don't learn the correct way to do things. When I say correct, not best practice. I'll give you one really good example. The guitar. So when I was a teenager, I wanted to learn to play the guitar. So did I go take lessons and then buy a guitar? No, I didn't have much money. I did save up to buy a nice guitar. Actually bought an electric guitar, and I bought a classical acoustic and a classical guitar. Ended up trying to teach myself classical guitar. And then one day, there aren't many professional classical guitarists, but one day I met one. He was actually living in the same city I was living in, and I watched him play, and he was a master. You know, he actually had a few, several releases. He had released some instruction books and things like that, so he knew what he was doing. And I took a couple of just tips from him, and what I learned really fast is that, you know, I'd gained some level of proficiency. I was not a natural, but I had learned some really bad habits, some way of doing things, and it was going to actually cost me more time than a brand new student to get to a higher level of proficiency, because I was going to have to unlearn these improper techniques. And so generally in life, when I have an opportunity to be not self-taught, to be guided, or to receive instruction on something, you know, often I will prefer that, but rarely do we get that luxury. To me, it has always been a luxury. Mentor says, agreed, formal foundational training is always best practice, yet once you have a solid grasp, then you can think outside the box and explore what works for me, yet not everyone. Very true. Very true. And again, it's not like, you know, some topics like Ansible. Ansible is not extremely difficult to learn. At least it hasn't been for me so far as a new technology. But again, I've been struggling a little bit to find, you know, best practices, and I'm trying to lay a good foundation for really good orchestration in the future and economy in terms of saving time and being able to expand the reach of, you know, what I'm doing now on a very small, you know, on a smaller project. And for those types of things, I would have loved to have had, you know, some sort of formalized training or briefing on, you know, what are best practices with this product. So I would always love, you know, in general, love to be self-taught, but often you lack the time. Like I said, when I, you know, work at a managed service provider, the time and the training, you know, the formal training is not always included in the project hours that have been designated to complete the task, for better or worse. So often for me in life, it has been a luxury. For the CCNA, CCMP, and up until now the CCIE, I have availed myself of some, you know, official training guides and things like that. But up until now, I've been largely self-taught, completely self-taught, actually. In terms of, you know, not going to, I have not yet been to a boot camp. I have not been to any courses. Yeah, trial by fire most times, exactly. Trial by fire. And so, you know, a lot of people have obtained their CCIE that way. But again, it's not always a preference, but I've learned to thrive as having to teach myself technologies. I've become comfortable with it over time, and that has been just out of necessity. And as a matter of fact, you almost have to have that skill in IT. No matter what branch of IT you're in, if you want to be a successful, you know, career person in IT, you really need to know how to teach yourself, because again, you don't often have time to get formal training. So while being self-taught on some things is not always the best route, you have to become good at it. So I remember I had one of my early managers in my career who I really admire. You know, I have less than a handful of managers that I've had that I can say I just learned so much from. And I've had good ones, I've had not so good ones, but he was a really good one. And what he told me early on is, and this stuck with me, is, the knowledge that how did he put it? Oh yeah, he said basically the knowledge that got you the job 3 years ago is now obsolete. And if I look back on my career, in large part that has been true. And simply because I've continued to move on to new projects, new technologies, learn new things by virtue of the work and doing things, new technologies coming out, having to learn those. And then the old way of doing things is no longer valid. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I became a VMware certified professional. I think it was 4.1 or something. But, it was very important at the time. We needed the certification as a company. But I was doing a lot of virtualization projects with storage and different hardware platforms, and I had to do all kinds of troublesome virtual machine P2V conversions. Good advice, and we know nobody will hold our hands. We're big boys now. Exactly. You just got to do it, right? And so, but I did get the VCP. It was important then, but it wasn't long after I got that 4.1 and 4.5 came out, and 5.0, 5.5, and everything had changed. So 3 years might be a long time for the knowledge that you have. So we are continually doing this, everyone knows, and so we need to be good at being self-taught and not relying. We don't always have that luxury of someone holding our hand. Rarely do we in the IT field. So anyway, speaking of Ansible project, moving right along to that, I have not been able to do much progress on my CCIE, written blueprint study because I've been buried. Like, I took a couple days off to study for the CCIE, and when I came back, I knew this was going to happen. It was just timing. I knew that I was going to have very little time to get to meet a deadline, which was yesterday, but I was getting a few more days till Monday morning, so I could finish the work this weekend. But this is one of those projects where I had the opportunity to do it the old way. It's something that we do somewhat routine. Anytime you work in IT and you deal with your end users or customers who are developers, well, there's a lot of things you do seasonally in IT that you might build and tear down. And this is one of those types of projects. With developers, you have different environments. Sometimes they spin them up, sometimes they spin them down. With DR, sometimes, you spin up environments, you spin it down or test it, tear it down, things like that. Is one of those sort of seasonal projects, and I've done them before, but this time, even with a deadline, I said, you know what, this will be a good opportunity. I have Ansible available. Let me do my component, which is a small part of the overall, implementation that we're doing, and it does involve F5. But I said, this is something that is a good use case for Ansible. Let me take the extra time, even if I have to work a number of hours to do it, but let me try to get it done with Ansible this time. And so far it's going well. I'm loving it. I really am. And I won't go into a lot of detail. Maybe in future, streams, I'll talk a little bit more about, some particulars of the modules I'm using. But F5, DevNet is what they call their developer network. Not DevNet, sorry. It may be DevNet, actually. A lot of people do that, using DevNet now, not just Cisco. DevCentral, sorry. Yeah, so they have DevCentral where the F5 staff have actually made available quite a few different modules. Just about anything you'd want to do on the F5 from Ansible or using Ansible, they've built these Python modules that you can call and use as part of your Ansible deployment. So I've been learning how to do that. The first playbook I did is actually yesterday, and it's a great feeling, man. When you run that first playbook And there's a lot that went into leading up to that. You know, I had to do a lot of information gathering and research, and I had to do some. I got my Python kind of messed up, which I normally do. I seem to have bad luck with sometimes getting Python modules where they need to be or in the right environment, but I was overcomplicating it, it turned out. But I got that all going, and then I was trying to research with Ansible before I even ran my first playbook, like what sort of environment, I want to do this repeatable, how do I separate different environments, and let's see, RSNE, all day $50 if you pour water on your head. Not a lot, just a decent amount. All I'd have to do is walk outside, man. That'd be easy, 50 bucks. Yes, I enjoyed F5 technologies, yet not certified. I'm not certified either. In my current position, I've had different positions like that where certification was important to the company, and certifications are important to my company, but it's not part of our revenue stream. So I've not taken any certifications either. But yeah, it's great. I mean, a lot of things that you can do. It's very diverse. I use Big IP on the daily. Yeah, I use it a lot as well. And man, the integration or the things that the Dev Central has come up with that you could do at Ansible is awesome. You know, F5 uses a RESTful API, and so the Python scripts basically make calls to the API. And I did, you know, my first playbook, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I think it was something like, you know, some new big IPs and set the NTP. Something very simple, but the first one you do is like, it's a good feeling. Then I'm like, okay, wow. So if I need to implement, I can, you know, I was looking at how to nest your YAML files for your hosts, so you can group your hosts together in different groups. And I started thinking about, man, let me just go ahead and build a directory structure and inventory files for a number of different groups. And let me start this out right, you know, so that I have my environments split up, and I have groupings the way, you know, I kind of want to start automating things. And it got a little deep, and I had to back up, and I read something that was really good on Ansible documentation. It's really practical. Ansible has good documentation, by the way. And they said, don't try to use all the Ansible features at one time. And I hit that, and I was like, man, how did they know that that's what I needed right now? So I just backed off a little bit. I was getting further behind on my project. I'm like, let me just back up. I know how to do deploy these configurations now with YAML, and so then I started doing some nodes, pools, and all kind of stuff. And man, I'm just loving it. Mentors, yeah, real world experience with Ansible definitely reinforces your learning curve. Yeah, it is. So it's one thing to read about it. And by the way, folks, I don't know if Ansible is called out in the new Evolving Technologies Guide or not. That doesn't mean you won't see it in the written. Let me just put it that way. I know I say that a number of times. I'm not trying to sound ominous or anything, but yeah, it's important to know things about Ansible for the written exam. But here's the new 1.1, and okay, netconf is there, and YAML. Well, I don't see YAML called out here, but it is in 1.0. But Yang is there, so that's by implication. Yeah, configuration management tools, agent and agent lists. So, and version control systems. So this is good. This is implied here. So essentially, you know, Ansible is an agentless configuration management tool, and I'm using Git and GitLab for my version control for this setups, which I've never done before either. I've been learning that. Puppet and Chef I know are covered. Yes, Puppet, Chef, Salt, and I think Ansible is covered in 1.0. It's actually explicitly mentioned, but it's implicit, I think, there in 1.1. And you know, I've seen, I'm pretty sure I've seen the word Ansible in one of my 2 exam attempts. So anyway, this I haven't been studying, going through my official blueprint, but I'm working in something that I haven't used yet, and I'm learning it. So this is helping me with my written as well, and that's why I'm covering it here. Also, man, I've had to do some parsing of text, and that's one thing I really love about Linux. And of course, our Ansible servers, the one I'm using anyway, is running on Linux. And I have now with Git, I didn't realize I could do this, but I installed Git tools on my Windows machine that I use for work, and it has a bash shell with just about everything in it. I've been wanting to do this a long time. So now I'm using these tools a lot more. There's a tool I used the other day where I wanted to take I basically had a list of like servers and a list of IPs. And in order to compose my YAML file, I had to take line by line, I had to take every line from the IPs and put them beneath each server. And I had to stream, I forget what the name of that command was, but I just did a quick Google search and someone told me the command you could use. Of course, sed is a very powerful tool. I don't know sed and awk very well, but I've used them a number of times to do some just magic with. So maybe I'll post a little more detail about that in the future, but I know I've tweeted about that stuff on my Twitter account. Yes, Windows migrating a lot lately with Windows. Definitely an interesting concept. Yeah, and who was it? YYZ was saying that, hey, all you have to do is install native Linux utils for Windows. You can do that with Windows 10. I don't have Windows 10, unfortunately. So anyway, yeah, it's really cool. I'm loving it, and it's great. I'm going to talk about that more as I go along, maybe even do some labs here, demonstrations. Just a couple other things in my written progress. I did buy, before my, when you sign up for networklessons.com, you can do an eval for $1 that is 1 week. After 1 week, they charge a credit card for 1 month, and it's $29 a month. Well, I went ahead and bought the whole year. I went ahead and made the decision. I think it was like day 7. I'm like, no, we're doing this. I really like this material. And so there's a screenshot of basically what you get. Yeah, so if you think about it, you can do it monthly, right? But for a year, that's $348. If you take this deal, if you do 1 year at a time, then you get you're basically saving $58. 619 lessons and a new lesson added every week. That's the thing about Network Lessons. Like, I'm thinking, wow, I wish I could just buy this as a video set or as a workbook. But it's more a service, every week he's adding a new video. And they're good videos. Or new lessons, not necessarily videos, but he's adding new lessons every week. So it's great stuff, guys. So far, I recommend it. I'll do a further review, though, as I've had more time with it. And my book came in. Again, this is the Asian edition. It's a paperback, Internet Working with TCP/IP. I don't know if you can see that. But Douglas Comer, my man. So I wanted this book the other day. Didn't have it. It's not on Safari Books Online. So I think I posted a link to it, and the link is legitimate. I got it on eBay, and it's new. I think. Yeah, it looks new. But it's just paperback, and it was cheap. You can buy it on Amazon, like the electronic version. It's like $100 or $80 or something like that. But you get a paperback for like $15. And also, I saw this, I was thinking about my performance on the written, how I only really gave myself like, I don't know, was it 3 months? And he posted this tweet the other day. Someone said, hey, Riker Robin and Catherine McNamara, how much time an average day per week did you spend studying for your CCIE? And Robin said, once committed 4 to 5 hours a day reading for the written. 4 to 5 hours a day after the written until I'd labbed all topics. Full-scale labs on the weekends. 4 hours grew to 10 to 12 over 4 to 6 months. Labbing every day becomes habitual and normal routine. When I read this, I was thinking, that's a strong commitment. That is way more time than what... It made me feel good in a way because Good and bad. Good because I realize I definitely have not spent as much time as he has spent preparing for the written, and he passed. So, maybe I need to be more committed in terms of time. Of course, I don't want to give up going to the gym, things like that, but could I carve out 4 hours a day? Probably. So I'm going to be rethinking, kind of what I'm doing on preparing for the written and what I need to do. And so it made me feel bad in that way too. Like, I am regular with my schedule and I do put in time, but I'm definitely not putting in enough time. So I'm going to be reevaluating there and seeing what I can do to up my game for this exam. Great tweet, though. I'm glad he shared that, with the community. OBS update, just a quick update. You notice I put a couple things down here at the bottom just to recognize. So I feel really good. Dimitri made that donation last week, and we had a number of supporters of the stream. So I just want to show appreciation and put their names down at the bottom, like a lot of streamers do. Also, I loaded this new app called Streamlabels. Mentor says, how I am definitely lacking and more committed as well. He also worked a full-time job. Yeah, and I met Rob Riker at Cisco Live. It's interesting. There's a story I kind of have with Rob in terms of streaming. When I was thinking about streaming, I went out and I looked on the internet and I just did a search. Okay, is anybody doing this right now? Who's doing videos on like this their CCIE journey? And I didn't really find anything except for Rob. Now, Rob he has a video out there that says, I think, I passed the CCIE. So he was, that was an inspirational video. He has a lot of views, a lot of comments. And I thought, wow, okay, so there's not a lot out there. There is, there's probably, an audience for this kind of thing. And so, I told Rob about that when I met him and appreciated his videos, and he's still doing videos. He didn't necessarily blog his whole journey, but he had a few videos about his journey, and I appreciated his candor and his, putting himself out there. So it was inspiring to me. But on streaming, I really appreciate the support, and so I put those labels down there. And there is a Streamlabs version of OBS. I'm using Streamlabs now for several things, like the alerts that would come up, like when someone subs, I get that alert. That's Streamlabs. And I'm using the regular version of OBS, so to add in all the Streamlabs stuff has been a little bit of work. But now there's a Streamlabs OBS, so when I have an opportunity, I'm probably going to upgrade to that, back up my system. Streamlabs can be, or OBS can be, a little bit to finagle, a little bit of work, so I don't want to lose that work. But anyway, let's talk about our puzzler from last week. Was what spanning tree feature is useful to reduce the number of TCNs in the topology? And this is based on a video I saw, or a stream of Stripe Interface Brief. I was watching him lab, and I was actually interacting with him, chatting with him during his lab. I chat too, folks, just so you know. Let's see. Mentors agreed. I've not found many CCI journey vlogs either. While your content and the other mentors have definitely helped me and appreciate it. Well, that's good. I'm glad, mentors, and hope it helps other people too. Because I don't know. It just, when you see other people, you see people get the CCIE. Like that's somewhat of a pedestal. We look up to people. Those of us who are striving for that. And it's just kind of this thing where we know people worked hard, but we don't really, sometimes, we just see that achievement. But I think it's good when you see others in the struggle, and you see others. It makes you feel better knowing that you're struggling and it's challenging. So, and oftentimes you don't see that part. So hopefully this will help people see that and help them to, carry on. But puzzler answer. So this was good, spanning tree, especially with IEEE spanning tree, the standard IEEE 802.1d spanning tree, you know that with all the changes in phase of a port, the transition phases, that any change in the topology can cause a significant amount of, it can cause, packet loss for a period of time while spanning tree converges, while the tree is recalculated. RSTP improves that significantly, along with MSTP, right? But I think he was labbing, there was a requirement for a particular interface to reduce the number of TCNs in the topology. And I told him an answer. It was correct in spirit, but not correct in implementation. So I knew the answer had to do with port fast, and that is the answer, because really port fast is a way for you to tell spanning tree or the switch that this is connected to a host, or it could be another device, a server, or even a switch, but as long as it's not something that you expect to receive BPDUs from. In other words, you want a way to tell spanning tree that yes, this port is a part of the topology, but and it's a part of the calculation, but I don't ever really expect this to become, a designated port or a root port. This is an edge port, so this is an edge device or devices, and I don't expect to be ever, receive a BPDU here. That's what port fast does, and by doing that, by enabling port fast, if there is a change on that port, let's say the port flaps, or someone shuts down their PC, or shuts down a server, well, you want spanning tree to ignore that event and not have to think that there's some sort of recalculation that needs to be done, right? So that's what port fast does. And because if there is a topology change, remember the switch has to notify, especially in an IEEE or 802.1d spanning tree, it has to generate a TCN, send it up its root port, and then those TCNs have to be acknowledged. It has to be received by the root bridge. Then the root bridge has to send topology change BPDUs. And then everyone has to age out. All the switches have to age out their MAC address table that are on that particular tree, on that particular VLAN, if you're using PVST+, right? So that's what it's for, right? Port fast. And then I'm sorry, I didn't come up with a puzzler. I've been working. I got to go back to work. I'm going to be working some tonight. Hey, Big Abe. Yeah, good old spanning tree, man. And there was some discussion about spanning tree. Actually, I watched part of Banner MOTD's video. I didn't get to catch his live stream, but I watched part of his videos on Twitch, and I saw that he's working, on VTP. And one thing I think is really good, and I need to improve upon for this next written exam, is the interaction between 802.1d spanning tree and PVST+, as well as interactions. In other words, if I have two trunk ports, and one is running PVST+, and the others weren't running 802.1d, the BPDU frames change. Mentors, I have a question. How about OSP database LSA possibly for next stream question? Puzzle. Oh, okay. OSPF database? Hey, all right, let's do one. What kinds of LSA types are allowed in a no, we'll make it a totally stubby area. All right, we'll do one. There we go. What kind of LSA types are allowed in an OSPF totally stubby area? Do you know the answer to that? Oh, okay, this will help on OSPF. Good deal. Oh, is he labbing right now? I checked earlier and he wasn't streaming yet. I may go when I wrap this up. We'll wrap this up in a moment. I may go and host him. Well, I can't host him. He's on YouTube, but I'll probably go check him out and hang out with old Tony. But yeah, that'll be the poster for tomorrow. And I got one. This is a cool link. This is a new member of our Discord server. And he has a blog apparently called Moosings. I love it. Blog until the cows come home. Not yet. I watched this 21-day. Yeah, I watched it this morning. I was catching up on his videos. This is a pretty looking. But I gotta check out his blog here. But there's a post here. If anyone wants to take a look. And then the other meat chunk of the day is a nice programmability. Why learn programmability blog from jasondevnet.com. So good stuff. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Hope you have a good rest of your Saturday. I will plan to stream tomorrow at noon, like I normally do on Sundays. And thank you so much for hanging out, everyone. And thanks for all your support. If you haven't yet, give us a follow. You can always, if you have a Twitch Prime sub available this month, hit that sub button. And we shall see you tomorrow back here soon on the Land Timber Stream. Yeah, Moo is a friend of mine. Awesome content. Yeah, thanks for referring him, mentors. I know you brought a lot of folks into the Discord server, and through mentors, I've met some cool people in there. So thanks a lot, folks. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. We shall see you tomorrow. And keep on labbing, keep on learning, keep studying. Send any good bits. We'll see you tomorrow on the Land Timber Stream.